I think I was wearing this exact same outfit in my last wrap-up video, which is interesting. But today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in September and October, my 2-month book wrap-up. I want to say that I didn't read a lot these past couple of months, but really I was reading about the same as I was at the beginning of the year. Since I started this channel in May, like over the summer, I was reading a lot, like 8, maybe 10 books a month. It was kind of crazy at one point. But recently I have kind of gotten into a book slump, really slowed down my reading. However, it's pretty equivalent to the amount that I was reading in like February, March. So I am reading slower, but I'm also kind of reading the same. Basically, I have 10 books to talk to you guys about today. And I wanted to say that my average rating also for these books is a 3.5. So it's basically right there in the middle, but it's more like I had a lot of really good books and a lot of really bad books and not much in the middle. So let's just get into it and start talking about the books that I read over these past 2 months. The first one that I finished in the beginning of September was Spark of the Everflame. And this book was actually just a straight down the middle book for me. Unfortunately, I know everyone has been really raving about this one, but it was just a 3-star for me. It was just okay. This book follows our main character. Do I remember her name? Jeez. DM. She's DM. And she is a healer and her mother went missing. And so she's trying to figure out what happened to her mother. While doing that, we realize that she is a mortal, which means that she doesn't have any powers. However, the descended are people that come down from gods and they have powers. And so there's kind of this like social hierarchy between the descended who are rich and powerful and get good education and the mortals who do not get any of that stuff. And of course, she thinks this is very unfair that the society is set up this way, and she starts to perform healing magic and starts healing people who are descended, and she gets involved with the royal family. All while doing this, she's trying to figure out again what happened to her mother, why she went missing. There is talks about revolution and fighting back against the descended in here, and there's of course a romance in here. There is an enemies to lovers romance that we get little snippets of throughout the entire book. I did vlog this book, however I remember that I just didn't really connect with it that much. A lot of people said this was a really fun, exciting fantasy romance book, but I will say that over these past 2 months I've really kind of gotten out of my fantasy romance era. Like, I want to say that, you know, fantasy girl fall was really upon me, but it kind of wasn't, because I was really tired of the same fantasy plots over and over again. And unfortunately, although this book was, you know, a fun time, I guess, I could predict a lot of the plot, and the main character was a little annoying to me. I didn't really like her very much, so I really was thinking about like not finishing this series after finishing this book. But I have heard that the other books get better, so I think I am going to continue this series, probably at least give it one more shot. But this was just kind of meh for me. 3 stars. It was not a bad book by any means. It was a good book, like well written and everything, but I just think that at the time I just wasn't really feeling it as much, if that makes sense. Now, on the complete opposite side, a book that I was definitely feeling, I loved this book. I read 6 of Crows this month, or last month, and this was a book that I have had on my TBR forever, literally forever. So I vlogged this one as well. As you can see, I have a lot of annotations in this book. I honestly could add more if I wanted to. I didn't annotate too much, but this book I just loved. I mean, I knew I was going to because the hype for this book is incredible, but it really does live up to the hype. So I gave this book 4.5 stars. It was just fantastic. This book follows 6 main characters basically, but our real main character is Kaz, and he is a boy. He says he's 17. I cannot, they don't seem 17 to me. They seem like early 20s in this book, but he's a 17-year-old boy. He's kind of like a con man, a criminal. He's very, very smart, and he gets the offer to do this heist. Basically, there is this kind of drug, like this substance that has been made that is going to be very detrimental to the Grisha, who are the magic people, the people who can have powers in this story. And the Grisha are looked down upon, which is why that people are trying to control and like get access to this substance. That way they can control the Grisha. However, Kaz gets this offer to go and save the person who created this substance from, is it the Ice Palace? The Winter, I think it's called the Winter Court. Let me double check that. The Ice Court. Okay, so it's from the Ice Court where he's being held. And this is a crazy high security, no one has ever gotten in and out before kind of heist, but he thinks he can do it, and he puts together a crew of 6 people. So him, there's Nina, there's Inej, there's Jasper, there's Waylon, and there is Mateus. All the characters are so well fleshed out. You understand all of them. You get their different point of views, like all of them at different points, but it all makes sense. And Leigh Bardugo's writing is amazing because she only gives you little snippets kind of their backstories, about their wants, their needs, and you just kind of learn little bits as you go on, and you grow to love each character individually for their own amazing traits, but also their flaws flaws, and we just kind of see the story unfold slowly as it goes on. This is a great example of how not to do the tell not show. Like, she is showing, not telling, and that's how writers should all write, in my opinion. So this is wonderful. It's engaging, the plot is moving, there is a little bit of romance, there are so many connections between the characters, and we just have this huge found family between the 6 crows, and they just learn to love each other, and it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful. Like, it's such a unique story. I'm absolutely in love with Leigh Bardugo. I understand why the hype is there, because it really is deserved. 4.5 stars. Please read it. It's so good. After this, I picked up Hawk, which is a book that I've heard about a couple years ago, but I haven't actually started, and I wanted to just read some kind of fun contemporary romance after those 2 fantasy books. So this follows our main character. What is her name? I read these a while ago. I don't remember everything. Her name is Nicole, and Nicole is married to this guy named Patrick, who is very much stuck up, not a great husband, doesn't really listen to her, is kind of controlling kind of guy. He's just honestly like a really bland white-collar worker, meh husband, right? Well, one of his old friends, Hawk, who we find out is actually an ex-convict, I think. He was in prison, but he got released from prison, is now staying in their house. And she doesn't actually know about this happening until one day she is in her house and she hears something from another room, and Hawk is banging some chick in their guest bedroom. So what a way to meet, am I right? But she meets this guy, and he's like, you know, covered in tattoos, and he's obviously getting down dirty in the other room, and very opposite from her husband, but she's a little intrigued, and they have enemies to lovers romance. And this book, I don't think it has, okay, technically there is the cheating trope in it. It's very much like she is a married woman and that is not her husband, and they definitely have feelings for each other. So definitely like a darker romance for sure. However, and I'm not condoning cheating at all in any way, shape, or form, but I do think that the story is set up to which we still root for Nicole and Hawk in this situation because of the things that Patrick does. And I actually didn't really expect this, but there is a plot twist at the end of this book. Like, we find out the history between Patrick and Hawk that is really, really interesting. I didn't expect that from a contemporary romance, but I was like, wow, I'm proud of Jessie Hall for like adding an extra layer into a story. I thought it was really interesting. So overall, I know I was gonna like this book, but I didn't really expect to really like it, and I gave it 4 stars. So like, I was like pleasantly surprised with this. I liked Hawk a lot, and I liked Nicole, and I'm glad that Nicole learned to stand up for herself against Patrick, because that man is just not the one for her, that's for sure. So yeah, this book, definitely check your triggers for this one. However, I did really enjoy it, and I thought it was super good. So 4 stars for Hawk by Jessie Hall. We've really had some good books so far, and speaking of another banger, I also did a reread this month, or last month. I keep saying this month, it's October. I meant September. So in September, I reread Saving Six by Chloe Walsh, and I also annotated this for the first time. Look how many tabs are in this. Like, let's just take a minute. Hopefully that focused. There are like a bajillion tabs in this. I really decided to take tabbing to another notch with this book because I have read it before. I've read the first 4 books in this series. I've been too scared to pick up Taming 7, but I love this series. Every book so far is a 5-star except for the first one, which is a 4.5. But I wanted to reread this one because the story of Joey and Aoife, which is what the 3rd and 4th books in the series follow, is my favorite story so far. I like them better than Johnny and Shannon. I love Johnny and Shannon, but I prefer the story of Joey and Aoife. So I wanted to reread this one, and let me tell you, it broke my heart in 2. Like, I knew it was going to be 5 stars because I already read it and I gave it 5 stars in June. Yeah, for the record, I actually read this book for the first time in June, so I'm already rereading it like a mere 3-4 months later. Like, that's how insane it was. And just going through the process again and actually annotating the lines that just stood out to me and sobbing over this book again and again, it's just amazing. So basically, the first 2 books in this series follow like X time to this time. Saving Six starts before those 2 books and kind of goes to the backstory about our characters, and then it kind of starts a little bit into the timeline of the first 2 books, and then the book after this one, Redeeming Six, picks up in the story and then continues on, and so that's when the timeline overlaps with the first 2 books, if that makes sense. So a little bit of timeline rearranging here, but it all makes sense because here we really follow the background of Joey and Aoife because they actually met when they were 12, and that's just so cute. It's like they're so adorable as like little kids in like 7th grade, 8th grade, or I think it's like 1st year, 2nd year, however you call it in Ireland, and they're just their story is so beautiful. Joey grows up in a very, very abusive family, but also he is dealing, especially with the later years, because it follows him basically all throughout high school as well. He gets into drugs and he becomes a really big drug addict, and we see Aoife, who has always loved him from a distance, although they were friends for a while, but they kind of have a reason for not getting together, and then she just realizes the darkness that's in him and she's wondering what's wrong, and then she realizes he's an abusive relationship and drugs, and all these things add up. And then the second book, which I didn't reread because I didn't have the emotional capacity to do so, I was sobbing over this book as it was with just the backstory, but the plot twists that happen in the next book in this series absolutely wreck me. So I think I will have to reread that one as well sometime soon, and also tab it and annotate it so that they match. But I don't know how to explain it to you guys. You guys know, because I've talked about this series before and because everyone talks about this series, but writing 13 and keeping 13, like this whole series, it's just amazing. Chloe Walsh has a way of writing that makes you connect so deeply with the characters, and it's not wholesome at all. There's so many triggers in this book, but like the love that the characters have for each other is so deep and so real, and that's what's wholesome about it. It's just incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Now after this, I read The Right Move by Liz Tomford because I was doing a vlog where I was completing series I'm in the middle of. So I read Mile High last year, I think, and I never got on to book 2. So I picked up book 2 last month and I gave it 4.5 stars. It was really, really good. So this follows our main characters, Ryan Shea, who is the brother of the main girl character in the first book. And Ryan Shea is this huge basketball star. He's very famous. He makes a lot of money. He's like a millionaire, super rich, but he's also super work focused. He doesn't really have time for girls, and all he really like loves is his sister. And then we bring in our main character girl, Indy, who is a friend of his sister. And Indy is just coming off of a breakup. I want to say they were engaged, maybe not, but like a long relationship. And she's probably going to move back to her, I think her hometown. But Stevie, who is Ryan's sister, convinces her that she needs to stay in Chicago with her because they work together, or they used to work together, I think. And she asks her brother Ryan if Indy can stay in his apartment because he has an extra room and he's rarely even there because he's traveling for work so much, and she could really use a place to stay. So he's obviously hesitant at first, but eventually he does let her stay. And they're very different because she is much more colorful and not as organized. She is very like passionate. She's very bubbly. He's much more conservative and quiet and organized and very work focused, but it's a beautiful opposites attract. And I don't really know how to explain it, but there's just so much to this romance than just people liking each other, thinking each other are beautiful. Like there's just so much more depth in this romance. Liz Tomford can really write a character relationship. We really see how the two of them connect, even though they're very different. They have a lot of similarities and they have so much chemistry with each other, but they also are like trying to hold back from falling in love because it's literally like his sister's best friend kind of thing. And also like he is such a words of affirmation and acts of service king. Like he will do everything for her. He bought her a bed. He was always like putting her coffee in the fridge because he makes hot coffee, but he knows that she likes iced coffee, so she'd always wake up and see coffee for her in the fridge. Like he was always doing this stuff for her, and they just say the sweetest things, and their relationship is just so wonderful and wholesome. And honestly, I need to finish this series like really bad. People don't love the first book. I really enjoyed the first book, give it 4 stars. The second one is 4.5 stars. So obviously this is a great series and I just need to keep reading them because 2 more are out and the 5th one is coming soon from what I can see. So yeah, really, really enjoyed this. It's also on my channel as a vlog as well. And additionally, in that same vlog, I also read Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage because this is book 2 in a different series, the Rebel Blue Ranch series. So I read Done and Dusted a couple months ago and I enjoyed it. I listened to it on audiobook and I gave it, I think it was 3.5 stars, maybe. Did I give it 4 stars? I don't remember. But I was like tickled at how I've actually enjoyed this book. It gives very much Hallmark movie vibes. Like everything was just very coincidental and very, you know, fell into place, but in a cute way. So I really enjoyed that one. The sequel was a little different. So this follows our main character, Ada, who is like a designer kind of girl, and she has a job to help design this new hotel in a small town. So she goes out there, and the night before the first day of her job, she goes to a bar, you know, to get a drink, get some food, and she sees this really hot cowboy in the corner, and they end up making out in the hallway, and then he like gets distracted and he has to leave. And so she's like, well, first day here, you know, got a good kiss out of it, I guess. She goes the next day, and guess who is the owner of the hotel or the bed and breakfast that they're building? It's Wes, who is the brother of the main girl character from the first book, and he's going to be technically her boss because they work together on this project. He is hiring her to help him design this bed and breakfast, and they obviously have some serious attraction to each other from last night, but since they work together, they kind of have to push that aside. So classic, you know, romance Hallmark story yet again. Unfortunately, this one I only gave 3 stars. I still enjoyed it. I listened to it on audiobook, but it just didn't give me the same vibes as book 1. I felt like it was very predictable. It checked all the boxes for a contemporary romance. However, I think it just like scratched the surface. I didn't really get into the characters as much. I didn't really like feel as much of their chemistry. Like, you know, it was a romance. It had all the things we needed to have, but like I just didn't feel that, you know, je ne sais quoi. So I gave it 3 stars. I still enjoyed this book, and I am going to continue the series because the 3rd book that I think is coming soon is about 2 other characters that I really enjoy. So I really want to read that one as well. But I think that just in general, this is a good, fun cowboy romance if you want just like a little palate cleanser. But I don't think it's like that romance is going to like change your life. You know, it's very just like middle of the road. It was fine kind of book. But I still do recommend it if you want to read a cowboy romance. Check out the Done Dusted series by Osage. All right, so we're finally moving into the books that I read this month in October. The first one was actually a 5-star. I'm so excited because I haven't gotten a 5-star since June. I mean, okay, Saving 6 was a 5-star, but this was a reread, and this was one of my last 5 stars that I read in June. So technically it doesn't actually count, but since I read that series, I haven't gotten a 5-star at all. And the first one was finally at the beginning of October, and that was For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. This is a book that I have been wanting to read for years, and I've had a lot of people give me critiques about this book. People say it's way too slow, way too boring. So I really wanted to read it. I was intrigued by the premise, but I've heard some mixed things. However, this really, really worked for me, and I really, really loved this book. Obviously, like we're getting a little Red Riding Hood vibes here. So basically in this society, in this kingdom, the first sister is for the throne, so she inherits the crown, and then the second sister is for the wolf. So in this society, there is a religion, and they sacrifice the second daughter to the wolf, who is this monstrous being that no one really knows about that's out in the woods. And every time that someone goes out there, they never come back. And so Rodaris is the second daughter, and so it's her job to be sacrificed to the wolf, and she meets the guy in the woods. Well, obviously, I think you can assume that he's not this crazy monster that's actually going to kill her. He's actually just a guy. His name is Eamon, and he's basically like, hey, I don't want you here either, but you have to be here. So let's just kind of like try to avoid each other and live in this creepy old castle in the woods together. And something about this was just amazing. This is a romance story, so we get a nice little enemies to friends to lovers in this, and it's just beautiful. I love, love, love the relationship. It's one of those books that isn't very like physical attraction based. I mean, they do have a physical attraction for each other, but I feel like in most like contemporary romance, there's this, you know, there's a lot of smut, there's a lot of emphasis on the physical aspect of things. This was just very beautiful, and that there was a little bit of that, but it wasn't the focus. A lot of the focus was on each other's intelligence, on their emotional connection, because a lot of it is them trying to save each other from things. The magic in this world basically takes a lot out of you. Like, it is not nice magic, if you want to put it like that. And so the way that they just care for each other and save each other and protect each other is just so beautiful. But along with that, I would say that also the magic in this is really, really cool. The forest itself, they call it the Wilderwood, is alive, and it is asking for things, and either you fight back with blood, like by spilling blood, or you fight back with magic. But the more you use your magic, it turns you into something you don't want to be. So there's a lot of like darkness in this, and there's a lot of like religion in this. There's just a lot of layers, and I thought it was really, really good. So is it a little slow at some parts? A little bit. Yeah, I can see that. I listened to the audiobook, that really helped me through. But overall, this was just a fantastic book. Gave it 5 stars. Probably my favorite book that I've read in the past 2 months. That wasn't a reread. It's just so good. Now after this, I read my first 1 star of the month, and I don't give 1 stars very often. However, Obsession by Harley Beck was in fact a 1-star book. And I do want to read my review for this because I think that I wrote my thoughts more eloquently in the review than I can like remember to say here. Basically though, for context, this book is about our main character whose name I do not remember. Let me find that out. Her name is Savannah, and she basically is tasked to go and interview this guy who is on death row. He's in prison. He was a serial killer. He decides that he is going to tell his story and explain to the world why he did what he did, but he's only going to tell it to Savannah specifically. And so we're kind of wondering like, why is she the one that has to go and answer and like be the one to do the recordings, but she decides to do it. And I want to say that throughout the entire book, I never ever felt the chemistry. I never understood why he picked her in specific. I just didn't get it at all. I didn't get the romance. But let me read my review. So number 1, I said it was so predictable. As a person who doesn't read a lot of thriller books, I predicted everything in this, and this was technically a romantic thriller, so it was supposed to be kind of mysterious and exciting, but I predicted a lot of what was going to happen. It was like kind of insane. Also, I felt like the entire plot was too convenient. I'm trying to be vague here, so I'm not giving like a lot of spoilers, but also I don't think you should read this book, so I also don't think that spoilers should affect you in my opinion. The writer uses Robbie's childhood trauma to explain the things that happens to him in the future, and I think to some extent there is a causation there for sure, because definitely Robbie had a very dark past. However, I don't think that the causation should justify it. Like for example, in the Mind series by S.T. Abby, I think that there was a lot of trauma that she had, and in the series she actually goes and kills her traumatizers. And in my opinion, is that still morally right? No. But I can support a character who's doing that because she's kind of taking revenge for what happened to her when she was younger. I can support that a lot more than a completely different character in this book, Robbie. I'm like, no, there is no correlation between your trauma and these random, very innocent people. So I could never get behind him and never support him. And I could never understand why Savannah was in love with him, because I just didn't. He's still a crazy guy. Like, he's still absolutely insane. And lastly, like I said, I don't think there was any romance and chemistry in this book at all. I didn't feel a connection between the characters. So that was basically my summary. Yeah, I read it because I was engaged in the story, but overall, I never actually enjoyed what was happening. I thought it was just a mess. So I gave it 1 star, and I do not recommend this book. So don't pick it up, not worth your time. I then read The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Now, this book took me a while to get through because this is a chunky girl, but also look at those annotations. Once again, I annotated the how out of this. It was actually insane. And I vlogged this entire process too, so this is one of my more recent vlogs, and I absolutely loved this book. So basically, whenever I read Obsession, I was like, this is a 1 star. I'm falling into a slump. Nothing's working for me. I need to read something else. I had picked up a lot of different books. In fact, I actually picked up Immortal Dark and Phantasma in one of my recent vlogs. However, I soft DNF'd both of those because they just weren't working for me. So like I said, I was kind of looking for something new. And I decided to pick up a Kristen Hanna book because I'd never read anything by her before, and this blew me out of the water. It was so good. And I knew it was going to be good, but it really was fantastic. I gave this 4.5 stars. This book follows our main characters, Vianne and Isabel. So these are 2 sisters, 10 years apart during World War II. And then when the Nazis invade France and they take over Paris and they take over North France, it affects both of these women in very different ways, and we just follow their story of how they're surviving through this war, how they are fighting to live their lives, how they are fighting against the German invasion. I feel like a lot of World War II books are written about the Jewish perspective and people in concentration camps, which very, very valid, okay? The Holocaust was absolutely a terrible, terrible time, absolutely horrendous time in history, and the fact that 6 million plus Jews were murdered for absolutely no reason by Hitler, it's indescribable, and it needs to be talked about for sure. I think it's important to have that literature out there. However, I did love how Kristen Hanna took a different perspective. It does talk about Jewish people in this book. It does talk about concentration camps in this book, but I think the majority of the book is just following 2 women and their impact on the war because they weren't Jews, because they were French people. And because of that, they can do different things and they can save different people. And I just saw a different perspective of the war with this book. Kristen Hanna took some very serious topics and just really fleshed out into a fictional, but very true to life story. I mean, people that we may, like our actual like ancestors probably went through something very similar to this, depending on where you're from. And it's just a crazy book to read. It pulls on your heartstrings. It's incredibly emotional. So 4.5 stars. My only complaint with this is that there's a little bit of romance that I don't really love in this book, but I don't think the focus at all was on the romance. The focus was on the girls and the women and the impact that women have in war. And it's just fantastic. And I need to read more of her books immediately. So this was amazing. Pick up this book. And then the last book that I read that I gave a whopping 1 star. Again, one more 1-star book this month. I read Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. It's honestly embarrassing that I did not want to read this book, okay? I've been avoiding this book for years, and I don't want to shame you if you do love this book. This is a very popular book with lots of controversy about it. If you like it, that's your opinion. You hold fast to that, whatever. However, I was scared of this book for a long time, and I did read it. And wow, did I not enjoy this at all. I did not like it. Basically, it follows our main character, Adeline, who moves into her grandmother's house, and her grandmother has passed away, so she has this very old, creepy manor, and she finds her grandmother's her great-grandmother's actually letters, and her great-grandmother had a stalker, and so she's reading about her great-grandmother's experience with this stalker and falling in love with this stalker, while coincidentally, Adeline also has a stalker. Now, I have so many issues with this book, so many issues, and I talked about them mostly in my last vlog, so I'm not going to try to repeat myself too much, but my main issue wasn't even the crazy plot of a stalker. It wasn't even like the crazy amount of smut. I can skim or skip over what I need to, that's fine, whatever. The problem I had with this book was number 1, the very predictable plot, and then also the characters. They're just dumb. They're dumb. Adeline is an idiot. If you have a stalker watching you outside, sending you cryptic letters, creeping around your house, I would move. I'm sorry. It's like the whole joke about if there's a spider in your house, you're moving like it's their house now. If there is a stalker following me, I'm doing anything. I'm hiring a bodyguard. I'm contacting the FBI, and I am getting my ass out of there. You know what I'm saying? She's dumb. But not only is she dumb, Zaid is crazy. He sees her one time, the first time he ever sees her, he thinks she's beautiful. He said that's the meaning of life right there, and therefore I'm going to stalk her and follow her until she falls in love with me and has my babies. Legitimately, that is his plan. That is his one goal in life, is for this random stranger to have his children and dick him down basically until the end of time. Wild. And then his entire career is to save people, specifically women and children who are being sexually molested, abused, killed. And I said, great, fantastic job. So maybe you would understand the meaning of the word rape, the meaning of the word consent, the meaning of people not wanting to be sexually assaulted, maybe. And then he turns around and he says, but Adeline, I know that she hasn't actually verbally given me her consent yet. What he's doing is sexual assault. I know she hasn't actually given me that consent yet, but I know she will. She will give it to me. Her body craves me. And therefore, it's justified, and it's not sexual assault if I'm doing it, because I know that she deep down wants me. If that's not the most hypocritical thing I've ever heard anyone say in my life, I was banging my head into a wall listening to his point of view. It is wild and crazy that a person who prides himself on working to save people who are raped and tortured goes on and legitimately sexually assaults her multiple times in this book. Multiple times. So with that being said, hated this book. I gave it 1 star. I thought it was absolutely terrible. I'm not reading the sequel, and I only read it because I needed to make a video with it. So leaving off this video on not a good note, because I did hate this book, but at least I have a passionate thought about it. At least it actually made me feel something. I'm really hoping that in the next wrap up for the rest of this year, I will have a lot of good books to talk about, and hopefully I read a lot of really fun things, get myself out of this reading slump. Let me know out of these books which ones that you have read, or if you're reading something really amazing and you have a recommendation for me, I would love to hear that in the comments below. As always, subscribe to my channel. I post a new video, a book video every single Thursday, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Sending you guys so much love. Have an amazing week, and I'll put my last reading vlogs right here on the screen for you to go check out.